Dear students, welcome to part 2 of lecture number 4. We are continuing the benefit cost analysis. In the part 1 of the lecture, we discussed in detail the framework of analysis and how the benefits are calculated for the benefit cost analysis. In this part, we will discuss the cost side of the benefit cost analysis. We know that the benefit cost analysis entirely depends on the estimation of the costs and benefits for a proposed project or regulation or a law. If the costs are overestimated or underestimated, or the benefits are underestimated or overestimated, then definitely the benefit cost analysis will be affected, and possibly we may not be in a position to derive a valid result. In developing countries, a high priority is placed on economic growth, so it is critically important to know how environmental programs will affect their growth rate and how costs are distributed among different social groups. This is very important to understand. Keep in mind, dear students, that in the developing countries, in most of the developing countries, the emphasis is the top priority of the government is to achieve the sustainable economic growth. So we know that the economic growth activities, the activities which lead to the economic growth, this lead to the environmental degradation. So if the environmental degradation control programs are launched, then definitely it will affect the economic growth rate, and we will be interested in finding out how these costs to the society are distributed among different social groups. In industrialized countries, in doing benefit cost analysis of environmental program, it is advised to get the cost estimates right. Means that in the developed countries there is a system available. They have a proper data collection system, and it is advised before launching the programs that to conduct a proper benefit cost analysis and get the estimates in the proper way, in the right way. We have some general issues which are relevant to the cost estimation. We know that the costs are estimated at different levels. The cost estimation may focus on the cost to a single community or a firm of environmental regulation, a single environmental project such as wastewater treatment plant or beach restoration project. Means that the cost of estimation of a project, this may be relevant to, this may be about a single community, a locality, a region, or it may be to a particular firm, or may be relevant to a specific environmental law, regulation, or it may be relevant to a specific environmental project like waste water treatment plant or beach restoration plant, or proper disposal of the solid waste, or proper disposal of the medical waste, or proper disposal of the medical waste, liquid waste. These are some of the important projects, as I mentioned. Similarly, we have costs to an industry or perhaps to a region of meeting environmental regulations or of adopting certain technologies. Just like a single project or a single law or a single firm, the cost may accrue to a specific industry, or it may be relevant to a specific region, or maybe the cost we have to estimate the cost of meeting some environmental law or regulation, or adopting certain technology which is dangerous for the environment, which is damage the environment. At macro level, the cost estimation may involve environmental project affecting the whole economy. Similarly, like a single project, or just like an industry or an area-wise project, a region-wise project, province-wise project, we can also have the macro level project, and at the macro level the cost estimation includes the environmental project, the environmental costs which affect the whole economy. For example, the pollution control regulations which may prevail in whole country, which may be levied in the whole country, which may be implemented in the whole country. So this is the cost estimation at macro level. Similarly, we have another type of the cost estimation, that is the with and without principle. Means with sometimes it happens that a law is introduced relevant to certain regulation. A regulation is introduced relevant to some environmental phenomena. If a firm can estimate its cost in the presence of that particular law or in the absence of that particular law. It is important to note that this is a little bit different. The with and without principle is different from the before and after principle. Suppose we want to estimate the differences in the cost that polluters would have with the new law compared to what their costs have been in absence of the law. Some certain law has been introduced relevant to the pollution. We will be interested in estimation of the cost in the presence of the new law, the new regulation, and we compare it to the situation if the law has been not introduced. This is not the same as the difference between their new cost and what their cost used to be before the law. I mean, this is not the case of the before and after the law case. Let a manufacturing firm for which a pollution control regulation has been proposed. Suppose there is a manufacturing firm and for which this law is implemented, and we say that we compare the costs. The estimated production cost, it was before the regulation, it was $100 US. In future, if the law is not implemented, it will lead to 120. It will be $120 US. But if the law is implemented, then the cost will be $150 US. Means that this 120 is without in the absence of the law, and this is in the presence of the law. Now, somebody may, if somebody say that the increase in the cost after the regulation is $50, then it will be it will not be an appropriate estimation. It will not be an appropriate estimation because it is wrong to say that the added cost of the pollution control regulation will be 50. As I discuss here, that if somebody said that the cost of this pollution control is 50, as the cost increased for 100 to 150 US. This is wrong because in the future it may happen that the production cost may increase due to increase in the price of the inputs or due to other reasons as well. So this the approximation of the cost as a pollution cost, $50 is not an appropriate estimation of the cost, and we are making mistake there. In the absence of any new law, production costs are expected to increase because of increased fuel costs related to the environmental regulations. As I discuss here, that the cost may increase from 100 USD to 120 USD, not only to the pollution control regulation, but due to the input, as I discussed, that this input may be fuel or some other input. Thus, the true cost of regulation is found by applying the with and without principle. So, this increase, 20 increase, 20 years increase is due to the other reasons. The actual increase with and without the law or the regulation is increase from 120 to $150. This increase in $100 to $120 is due to increase in the inputs, while this $120 to $150 is due to the environmental regulation. Here these costs are $30 cost in the future with the regulation minus future cost without regulation. With regulation, without regulation. The difference is 30. Of course, this makes the whole job of cost estimation harder because we want to know not historical cost of a firm or industry, but what its future cost would be if it were to continue operating without the new environmental laws. Another type of the cost is the social cost. The social costs include both the private costs and any other external costs to society arising from the production or consumption of a good or service. Social costs are those costs stemming from an action and are equal to private cost plus the external cost. When our power plant produces electricity and air pollution, taking steps to reduce the air pollution involve a reduction in social cost and increase in the production cost as a result of adopting and operating pollution controls technology. Whenever electricity is produced, we know that this plant produces electricity, but along with the electricity, due to if it is a coal-based plant, the electricity is produced with the help of a coal, it may have very huge air pollution. So steps will be needed to reduce this air pollution, and the steps taken to reduce this air pollution will reduce the social cost, and it will increase the production cost because the firm will have to pay to the government for this reduction in the pollution control technology. In effect, power production without pollution control requirements amounts to public subsidy to power producers, and again in social welfare is possible by adopting pollution control policy. There are many other examples of the public subsidies leading to the distorted output levels, which could be ameliorated by appropriate public policies. Another example is the coastal zone flood insurance in the United States. The commercial insurance for the property constructed in the coastal zone would normally have such high premiums because of expected loss from the floods, and that how coastal homeowners could afford it. Thus, the U.S. government and sometimes state governments will often subsidize the coastal zone insurance so that the people building in these areas can get insurance at substantially less than commercial rates. If there are more chances of the floods in the coastal coastal zone, there are more chances of the floods. So the insurance is introduced by the government and by the states in order to this insurance is substantially at less than the commercial rates floating in the market. The effects of this have been to reduce the private monetary cost of building and maintaining homes in the coastal zone, and thus substantial development has occurred there with abundant environmental impacts. Due to this subsidy, more and more buildings are constructed, more and more houses are constructed in the coastal zones, which is creating the problem of environmental pollution. A reduction in these public subsidies to coastal home owners not only would work to reduce the environmental impact, but also would lead to an increase in the national output. So, it is suggested by environmentalists to reduce such subsidies to the homeowners, because on one side it will lead to saving, which will increase the national output, and on the other hand, it will discourage the more and more housing, and which will reduce the environmental degradation, the environmental pollution, and the other phenomena of the resource depletion. Of course, coastal homeowners would suffer losses. There are many other examples like this as given below. Agriculture subsidies in many developed countries have provided the incentive to develop intensive chemical-based production methods, which have resulted both in the increased agriculture output and in the non-point source water and air pollution to which these methods lead. The agriculture subsidies are given in many developed countries to encourage the farmers. This increased subsidies, these high subsidies, these enable the producers, the farmers, to produce the chemical-based production methods, which lead to the environmental degradation. Reducing agriculture subsidies would increase the national income and reduce the environmental impacts, though of course some of farmers will be worse off. The next type of the cost in the benefit cost analysis are the distribution of costs. The overall social costs of the environmental regulations are important in assessing their cost effectiveness. A question arises how these total costs are distributed among different groups in society. We know that there are costs due to the environmental regulations. The government is interested in regulating the environment, in the preservation of the environment, but in order to preserve the environment, the government will have to introduce some regulation, and this regulation will increase the cost of production. And with increase in the cost of production, this cost will be distributed. This will not be borne by the producer only. This will not be borne by the industrialist only, but this will be distributed in the different sectors of the economy. Environmental regulations initially may lead to increased production costs in industry to which the regulation applies, but changes will not be confined to one industry because it may be the input producing industry. So if the cost of production rises, definitely if it supplies the input to the other industries, the prices of the output will also increase in those industries, thereby shifting the burden to the consumers. With change in the production technology, input mixes and other aspects of the operation, their prices are likely to change for both outputs and inputs. As I discussed in this third point, that if the certain regulations are introduced for the environmental protection, then it will definitely lead to changes in the production technology and some other changes. These changes will lead to increase in the prices of both inputs and output. The consequences of the regulation will be shifted to consumers and input supplying firms. As I discuss here, that the ultimate effect of the cost of the environmental regulation will fall upon the domestic consumers. Employees of regulated firms will be impacted when the production rates increase or decrease in the affected industry. Similarly, the concept of you people are well aware of the concept of the opportunity cost, and it is one of the fundamental concepts of the theory of cost. The opportunity cost of using a resource in a certain way is the highest value these resources would have produced had they not been used in the manner under consideration. That suppose a resource is used in a production process, then its opportunity cost is that cost. If we have not used this resource in this particular process, the cost which would have been the highest value of the cost which would have been the absence of this activity, this process, is the opportunity cost. If resources are used to produce cars, they can't be used to produce something else. Once we have used the certain resources for the production of cars, then we will miss some other type of the production, and that is the opportunity cost for this. If resources are used to enforce air pollution regulations, they can't be used to implement land use regulations. This is this point also clarify the concept of the opportunity cost. That if you used certain resources, if we diverted certain resources of economy to control the to control the air pollution or to enforce to enforce the air pollution regulations, then we will not we will exhaust these resources in case of the air pollution, and we will miss the use of these resources for land use regulation. It is the foregone values of these alternative uses that constitute the opportunity cost of pursuing a particular course of action. Costs are incurred by all types of firms, industries, agencies, or groups. Means that the costs are not borne by only a single firm or single industry, but they are borne by different groups. From the perspective of a private firm, the opportunity cost of producing a good or service is it would have produced if it had chosen a different output. The environmental costs, we discussed this I think in the previous slide as well. Environmental costs are important costs to consider in the environmental related issues. More specific emission reduction programs are aimed at reducing the emissions into one particular environmental medium such as air or water. So when emissions into one medium are reduced, they may increase into another. Similarly, reducing untreated domestic waste outflow into rivers or coastal ocean leaves quantities of solid waste that must then be disposed of, perhaps through land spreading or incineration. Reducing airborne sulfur dioxide emissions from power plants by stage gas scrubbing also leaves a highly concentrated sludge. Reducing airborne sulfur dioxide emissions from power plants by stage gas scrubbing also leaves a highly concentrated sludge that must be disposed of in some way. Means that if we control the sulfur dioxide emission, then we will get its waste in the form of the sludge, which also needs to be disposed of. Incinerating domestic solid waste creates airborne emissions. Enforcement costs. Environmental regulations are not self-enforcing. When these are introduced, environmental regulations are introduced, these needs to be enforced. Resources must be devoted to monitoring the behavior of firms, agencies, and individuals subject to the regulations and to the sanction violators. Means we have to divert resources for the monitoring of the concerned firms, agencies, or individuals for whom the regulations have been introduced. Public environmental facilities such as wastewater treatment plants and incinerators must be monitored to be sure that they are being operated correctly. Similarly, many environmental laws are enforced by agencies whose enforcement budgets are not strictly tailored to the enforcement responsibilities they are given. Thus, the budgets can be stable or even declining at the same time that new environmental laws are passed. Enforcing the new laws may require shifting agency resources away from enforcement of the other laws. In short, summarizing the enforcement cost, the enforcement costs are those costs which are required for the implementation, for the enforcement of the certain new laws or regulations introduced. Cost of the single facilities. The easiest type of the cost analysis to visualize is that for single or engineered project of some type. We have different types of the environmental quality programs that involve publicly supported construction of facilities such as public wastewater treatment plant, of which hundreds of millions of dollars worth have been built over the last few decades. Other examples include flood control projects, solid waste handling facilities, hazardous waste incinerators, beach restoration projects, public parks, wildlife refuges, and so on. Facility type projects such as they are individualized and substantially unique, although Of course, they have similar objectives and use technology that is similar to that used for many other projects. To estimate their cost, primary reliance is placed on the engineering and technological specification developed largely through experience with similar type of other facilities. Summarizing the discussion, the single facilities, cost of single facilities are relevant to those environmental control programs like the flood control, like the solid waste control, like the air pollution, specific air pollution project, and so on. So this was the cost side of the benefit cost analysis, and these are the detailed reference for this lecture.